This is Right to Life Radio with John Girardi on Power Talk 96.7 and AM 1400, a production of the Right to Life of Central California. And now, here's your host, John Girardi.
Right to Life Radio is proudly sponsored by D's-On Medicine and D's-On Medicine Urgent Care Plus. Welcome to Right to Life Radio, the radio show, podcast, YouTube show of Right to Life of Central California, rtlcc.org. And as we always do on the first Saturday of the month, I'm joined today by Linda Teliha, and Linda is going to be regaling us with more stories from the Sidewalk. These are our the work that we do at Right to Life Central California outside of the Planned Parenthood Clinic on Fulton Street. Linda Teliha, thank you so much for joining us again.
I love it. This time I have a really great story.
Okay.
I was going to say the best story ever, but we've had so many good ones. It's a good one.
Well, good. So for those who don't know, Right to Life Central California, we have a building located right next to Planned Parenthood, and some of our employees, George and Linda, are out there every week talking with women and couples going into and out of Planned Parenthood to give them alternatives to abortion. And Linda, you've got a pretty cool story for us this week, I believe. So I will give you the floor and go for it. Let us know about what cool stuff have you guys experienced out there over the last few weeks.
All right. So I had an opportunity to talk to a girl that was, I don't know why I said girl, because she was...
Young woman. Yeah.
She was 19 turning 20, which we both talked about was a big deal, because then as soon as you turn 20, you're no longer a teen pregnancy, and that's
that's
very important.
Yeah.
So anyway, so she was about to head in, and I just asked her, hey, you're not planning to have an abortion, are you?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, actually, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, shoot, would you like to come over and talk to us for a little while?
Yeah.
And she said, yeah, I guess I could. Which I was the whole thing surprised me.
Sure, yeah.
So I was like, okay, come on in. And we talked for about 3 hours.
3 hours, all right.
So, but it wasn't just me. It was me, and then we had Sarah, who also works here. And so she came on with FaceTime. And then a couple of volunteers popped in and just kind of gave their 2 cents and their stories. And I sent one of the volunteers went off and got breakfast for all of us. So I'm not sure if I should talk about this, but at our training thing in San Francisco, they talked about something, and that was if you get a chance, offer food.
Really? Huh.
Yes.
So for those who don't know, Linda and George attended a training run by Live Action, which is another pro-life organization. It's led by Lila Rose. Yeah. So that was one of the strategies to get food.
Well, it
makes sense. I mean, it gives you time, and it gives you something. You're kind of an activity, and you're bonding in some way. Like you've had a meal with someone that means something.
Well, it's not just that. Well, that eliminates the opportunity for getting an abortion that day.
Sure.
So.
Oh yeah, because you've eaten.
Yeah. So it's a twofold.
Yeah.
So anyway, and I kind of laughed about it with her anyway, and I said, well, you already ate, so you can't do it today. And she was like, oh, you're kind of sneaky.
Well, good. That's a clever idea. Well, yeah, a little bit, but I mean,
this is after 3 hours of everything. And,
so what were some of the things she was saying? I mean, that were factoring into her decision. I mean, it was various.
Well, first of all, so the good thing was she's like, I have a full-time job. I have insurance.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to school, but nobody in my life would be supportive. Everybody would want me to have an abortion. And so we started walking through that. And one of the things that happened was she has this adoptive sister, and luckily she doesn't live in town. She lives out of town. And she was like, this sister is she's not going to be supportive of this. And this person I talk to every day. So we talked a little bit about that. And so ultimately she made her decision. She said, when I was walking up and I looked at you, I knew.
Yeah.
I just knew.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that's good. And I know this is the hard part. And she said, well, it's my sister. And I said, so do you want to call your sister while I'm here? And she said, yes, I really do.
Yeah.
Okay, bring it on.
Yeah. So
she calls her sister, and her sister just goes off on her. You need to get over there and get your business taken care of, and blah, blah, blah. And I can see everything changing. And this is after, 2 hours and 45 minutes. And so she hands the phone over to me and says, here, talk to this person.
So you're given a phone with an angry person you don't know.
She was angry
yes,
too,
yeah.
She just went off lots of words that I can't repeat. And
Yeah.
I just said, "Hey, hold on. I'm just trying to help." And she just said, "I don't care.
Yeah.
Just goodbye," and hung
Yeah.
up on me. And I was like, "Okay."
Okay, that could have gone better.
Yeah.
But,
and
yeah.
so my new friend says, "I got to go over there." And I said, "No, you don't. Listen to me." And she said, "Well, I've never heard her talk like that before. She's a church lady and she said she loves me unconditionally." And so that gave me an in. And I said, "Well, let me talk to you about love a little." Because I'm an expert.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
So,
hey, no one's an expert. No one's an expert. We're just doing our best. So there you go.
So she says, "But she loves me unconditionally." And I said, "There's a thing about love. You can love someone and still be wrong."
Right.
And she is wrong.
Right.
She's very wrong.
That's an important. It's an important point to stress. Yeah.
So this person had already told me that she wants to be a social worker and she wants to have a daycare. And I said, "Look, here's something you got to start doing." She said, "What?" And I said, "You need to start standing up for wrong. How are you going to help these people you want to help stand up to wrong?" And we've talked about some of the wrongs. So you need to start now. You need to stand up to wrong.
Yeah.
Stand up for your baby. And sooner or later.
Well, sure. Yeah. One conversation where someone yells at you can't be the determining factor of your life's course. If every time someone yelled at me and then I just do what you're telling me because you yelled at me, which is
we know that doesn't happen.
Well, no, it's 100% happened anyway. Anyway, yeah.
So she gets herself together and she's leaving and she says she's choosing life and it's already taken too long. She had something to eat anyway. So I'm like, okay, that's a 50-50. And I'm waiting and I go out that night with my soccer friends and I tell all of them, "You need to pray," and they're all in.
Yeah.
And we're waiting.
The point you're making about, it's a 50-50. And there are no specific pro-life organizations I'm going to necessarily call out, but obviously we at Right to Life Central California, we celebrate our successes. If someone has chosen life, that's great. But one of the things I don't like is that sometimes pro-life organizations, they just get someone to say on the spot on the sidewalk, "Yeah, we decided not to." And they're like, "All right, chalk one up. Let's put it on the scoreboard. We got it." But do you know that? Have you had follow-up? Do you know that they couldn't have just come back the very next week and gotten an abortion? You can't just unless you have follow-up.
Yeah.
You can't ever really know. And I think that's an important point to stress.
It is, but I'll tell you that I've done the same, where I'm having a couple of weeks where nothing's happening. I'm like,
sure.
That person said no, so it's...
Well, yeah, and I mean, if that's the only data point you have, I mean, and we have to be modest about it. The one data point we had was this person told us, "No, we're not going to."
Yeah.
Okay, that's great.
Start.
But yeah, it's... Anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Better.
But anyway, yeah.
This gets really
so it gets better. Okay.
Actually, it got worse before it got better. A couple days go by and I'm like... That's a bad sign. I'm texting, Sarah's texting. We're not like incessantly texting. We're just, "Hey, are you okay?"
Yeah, occasional follow-ups, yeah.
So 2 days later, I'm doing something. I get a phone call from her.
Oh,
and
wonderful.
She said, "I just want to let you know that I chose life." And I ended up talking to my mom, my birth mom.
Oh, wow.
And she's supporting me. Do you want to talk to her on the phone?
Oh, that's really cool.
I was like, "Oh my goodness." Hold on, let me take a little break here. And I just...
And take a shot of whiskey first.
I was after the first family member, who knows what was coming.
Yeah. You were already so popular.
Where do you live?
Yeah. You were already so popular, yeah.
Yeah, but no, she got on the phone and she just said, "I want to thank you because someone else did this for me."
There you go.
And so I am going to support my daughter wholeheartedly and she's choosing life. So I thought, that is a win among wins.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say that we were supposed to get together for breakfast, all of us, the next week, and I didn't hear from them.
Yeah.
And I was like, no. Yeah. They may change their mind. And then a couple of nights ago, both Sarah and I got a text, and it was an ultrasound.
Awesome. Well, there you go. That seems pretty good.
That is an actual save.
Well, and that's the thing, especially...
That's a win-win-win.
Once the ultrasound, I don't know what all the statistics are about ultrasounds, but once women actually have the opportunity to see an ultrasound of their own baby, the odds of them actually choosing abortion just...
And if they send it.
Yeah, well, especially if they're sending it out to friends or near complete strangers. Yeah, it's...
hey, now we're friends.
Well, yeah, now you guys are friends, yeah. But that's such a cool story. And it actually highlights... This is a thing I've thought about in reference to our subsidiary corporation, the Obria Medical Clinics of Central California. So in the education context, there are these things, I forget the specific terminology of them, but they're called like security factors, I think. And basically, a student is most set up for success if they can list a number of these different kinds of security factors. So living at home with both parents have a job, a good relationship with parents, not using drugs, basically like various factors, support factors, or various kinds of support factors that exist in your life, that the more of them you have, the more inclined you are towards academic success, educational success, etc. And I've been thinking about this more and more, especially with reference to our Obria clinic. I mean, one of the thesis statement I have for my elevator pitch is Fresno County has a dearth of affordable prenatal health care options for lower-income women. If you live south of Shaw Avenue, your odds of getting any prenatal care before you deliver drops like 10%. It's like 88% of women north of Shaw Avenue get prenatal care, 78% south do. And having access to, and it's making me realize that the abortion decision is really almost always a question of how many of these security factors do you have?
Right.
Do I have a supportive family? Do I have a supportive spouse or partner? Do I have enough money? Do I have access to good health care? The more of those security factors that we can cobble together for someone, I think the more likely it is that they're going to choose life.
I kind of want to cut in on there, because the thing that you're bringing up is the thing that I know about, and it's the thing that most people don't know they actually have. So there are a lot of girls and women that come in and they'll say, I don't have any support. And that's where I come in and I'll say, are you sure?
Don't you? Yeah. Let's go through.
When was the last time you let your mom be a mom?
Right.
That usually stops them in their tracks, and they actually backtrack. And I haven't had any one of them come back and say, you know what, you were wrong. My mom said I'm an idiot.
Is completely out there. Yeah.
It's sometimes that, you get in this mode where you're thinking that you know how other people think about every issue. And
maybe you don't.
You haven't even asked.
Yeah.
And you don't know. You don't know what your friends are actually going to say. You just assume.
Yeah. Or again, like in this girl's case, like you think that, well, if I don't do it, my sister will cut me off forever, as opposed to, maybe someone will be disappointed in you or disagree with you, but that doesn't mean they're not going to love you. And if you make that, and if you make that decision, it doesn't mean that they're going to absolutely hate you and never have anything to do with you.
No.
So and that's I think an important thing that you do is to let people know, hey, you have a few more of these security factors than you think you have. And then especially once we get, once the Obria clinics open later this year,
well, and
here's the medical clinic.
Yeah, medical clinic. They have us. We follow up.
Well, and that's one of the things I hate so much about Planned Parenthood is this notion that, well, we're the only thing available for lower income women. We're the only thing available for lower income women. When it's like a lot of Planned Parenthood, like one of the two Planned Parenthood clinics, doesn't have any prenatal care at all, and what prenatal care services they have are pretty minimal. It's not like you can just go to Planned Parenthood through the whole course of your pregnancy necessarily, and then no, that's not what they're set up to do. That's not who they really are. They're focused on family planning, on contraception and abortion and stuff like that. So these girls have been just sort of taught to, these young women and girls have been taught to think, oh no, Planned Parenthood's the one place you go. Planned Parenthood's the one place you go.
And they do say that a lot.
And that's just not true. It's not true. There are other clinics you can go to. When we establish Obria, that'll be the other place to go to. So anyway, Linda, thanks so much for being on. That's a great story. It
to be
continued with more as we do this every first Saturday of the month.
I have to say one more little secret.
Go for it.
That when both Sarah and I talked on the phone, we both were like choked up.
Sure.
That's a secret because we're pretty strong women, but this is one of those all
it's
the way
a good
perfect stories.
It is. All right. Thank you, Linda. All right. We'll be right back with Right to Life Radio after this. Thank you all so much for tuning in. A production, as always, of Right to Life of Central California, rtlcc.org. All right, guys. I would be remiss not to talk about the big issue of the week. Our thanks again to Linda Teliha for doing stories from the Sidewalk. But the big news this week in the pro-life world is obviously the Texas Supreme Court case, the Texas heartbeat abortion law, which the Supreme Court decided not to strike down earlier this week in a decision, a so-called per curiam decision, which means that no one justice signed it. The 5 more conservative justices, so Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, Barrett, Alito, and Thomas, said that Texas's law that bans abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy could stand, that they would not overturn it, they would not prevent its enforcement. And so today in Texas, for the first time since 1973, there is a state with a law on the books banning abortion at the very least after the point when fetal heartbeat can be detected. This is a huge, huge, huge thing. So what I want to do today on the show for the remaining segments of today's show is explain how this happened, what is going on, how on earth the Supreme Court upheld this, or at the very least decided not to overturn this, or not to delay this, because it's an earth-shattering thing. So let me explain what happened. First, very quickly, let's explain what the Texas law actually does. The Texas law is similar in some ways, but very different in one very distinctive way that I'll explain, is very similar to a bunch of laws that a bunch of different states have been passing over the last 3 or 4 years. It is a heartbeat bill. So the idea is heartbeat is a very significant, some would argue, a very significant indicator of the presence of a valuable human life. Now, I would say that just being a human organism is what's important, but whatever, they're trying to find some hook. So what Texas is saying is after fetal heartbeat can be detected, which is around 6 weeks of pregnancy, all abortion is illegal. Now, a number of states have passed bills like this. I believe Ohio passed a bill like this. I think Louisiana passed a bill like this. I think Missouri may have passed a bill like this. Almost all of the states in the Southeastern Conference wound up, just for the football reference, by the way, thank God college football's back. Almost all of the states within the Southeastern Conference passed laws outlawing abortion after fetal heartbeat can be detected. The difference, now, in all of those states, those laws were enjoined from being enforced. What does that mean? Enjoin. An injunction is a court order telling someone to stop doing something, to not do something. Okay? What was happening in these other states was the states were passing these laws outlawing abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy. Pro-abortion activists would then sue the state, and then the courts would say, well, we have these precedents on the books of Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey. These laws violate Planned Parenthood versus Casey, so we enjoin state officials in Louisiana, in Ohio, in Missouri, in this state, in that state. We enjoin these state officials from enforcing this law that bans abortion after fetal heartbeat can be detected. And that is what has happened in all of these other states other than Texas. Because in all these other states, this was a criminal law, basically saying we will impose criminal penalties on doctors who do abortions. And in a criminal case, who are the two parties? It's the guy who's accused of the crime, and on the other side is the state. Okay, so if I commit a murder or something, the prosecution against me would be the state of California versus John Girardi, or the people of California versus John Girardi. Okay, so you can sue the state and say, stop enforcing this law. If you're a pro-abortion person, you want to stop this law that imposes criminal penalties on abortion, you sue the state and you try to get an order from the judge saying, hey, state of Ohio, state of Louisiana, whatever, stop enforcing this law. What Texas did was different. Texas, in their heartbeat ban, created a civil cause of action. A cause of action is basically the ability to sue, to file a normal lawsuit. Texas, in their law banning abortion after 6 weeks allows individual citizens to sue abortion doctors for performing abortions. So because it's not the state of Texas actually enforcing it, it's individuals. It's individuals just suing abortion doctors. The pro-abortion activists were basically unable to get the Supreme Court to issue an injunction because the state of Texas wasn't enforcing it. The state of Texas had nothing to do with it. Texas is empowering individuals to sue abortion doctors, and so Texas's abortion law was allowed to come into effect. When we return, I'm going to explain all of this a little bit more detail, what it means for Texas, what it means for the rest of the country, next on Right to Life Radio on Power Talk 96.7 AM 1400. Here on Right to Life Radio, the best bumper music in the greater Fresno area radio market. Some say even the whole world. All right, I'm trying to explain this Texas abortion law and how it was allowed to stay in effect by the Supreme Court. And I was explaining what this Texas abortion law does is it creates a private right of action to file a civil lawsuit. Okay, but so what it means is it allows individuals to sue abortion doctors. It doesn't impose criminal penalties on abortion so that you'll go to jail if you do an abortion. It creates the ability for individuals to sue abortion doctors if they do abortions. So instead of abortion doctors going to jail, they would have to pay through the nose. Now, by doing this, some of you might say, well, that's lame. If they're, abortion's really, really wrong, they should go to jail. I agree. Abortion is really, really wrong. I think people who do abortions should go to jail. However, the reason why they structured it like this was actually very clever. Because, as I was explaining, when other states pass these heartbeat bans, it's immediately enjoined from being enforced. It's prevented from being enforced. Courts prevent these laws from coming into effect. Abortion advocates like Planned Parenthood will sue when they see this law has been passed. They will immediately sue the state in the federal courts. They will say the state is violating women's rights under the terms of Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey. Therefore, this law should be enjoined and prevented from being enforced. And when a court issues an injunction, they issue an injunction to a person. It's an order to a person to get that person to stop doing stuff. And usually what happened in those other states was it was an injunction against the governor of that state, against the attorney general of that state, against the district attorneys within that state. Hey, you cannot enforce these criminal prohibitions on abortion. Problem solved from the pro-choicers' perspective. But here what Texas did, it created a civil right of action that individuals can sue abortion doctors. So Planned Parenthood didn't even know whom to sue to prevent the law from being enforced. They wound up suing Texas, and basically what Texas responded to, the way Texas responded in the courts was to say, hey, we're not going to enforce this law. Our governor's not going to enforce it. Our attorney general's not going to enforce it. The district attorneys in Texas are not going to enforce this. No one in Texas is going to enforce this law. The sheriffs, the police, none of them, the Texas Rangers, the baseball team, and the police unit, none of them are going to enforce this law. The people who are going to enforce this law are individuals who are going to sue. So basically, the abortion activists who are suing in this case, they wanted an injunction to stop the law from being enforced, but they didn't have anyone there that they were suing who was going to enforce the law. So the majority in the court said, well, we can't just give a general injunction against everybody. We have to put it against one of the defendants, and none of these defendants are going to enforce this law against you. So what are we even doing here? Now, the response to this Texas abortion law has been predictably unhinged and insane. Hillary Clinton took to Twitter to bewail the fact that Roe v. Wade has been overruled. I wish Roe v. Wade had been overruled, and maybe we'll talk in the next segment about whether or not what this decision by the Supreme Court may mean for the future of Roe v. Wade, which will be decided next year in the Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization case. So Hillary Clinton is just bewailing this, and the President of the United States, who I will note took him a lot of days to talk about anything after Kabul fell, but apparently has the time to immediately make a statement when the Supreme Court upholds a Texas abortion law. Anyway, the President of the United States, that's neither here nor there, the President of the United States issued a statement after the Supreme Court decided to uphold the Texas abortion law. And in this statement, I think he's really letting slip something that a lot of pro-choicers sort of believe on the down low, but don't say out loud. So let me read you his quote. This is from the President of the United States. This extreme Texas law blatantly violates the constitutional right established under Roe v. Wade and upheld as precedent for nearly half a century. The Texas law will significantly impair women's access to the health care they need, particularly for communities of color and individuals with low incomes. Let me read that last part again. The Texas law will significantly impair women's access to the health care they need, particularly for communities of color and individuals with low incomes. So, according to the president, the health care they need, particularly communities of color, and particularly people with low income, is abortion. Now, there's a lot to quibble with there. First of all, calling abortion healthcare in the first place doesn't make any sense. Abortion isn't healthcare. This isn't some argument. This isn't some other way of me saying abortion is bad. Objectively, abortion is not healthcare. Healthcare involves fixing something that is wrong with the human body. Abortion does not do that. Abortion is actually arresting a natural process within the human body, i.e. pregnancy. Okay, being pregnant is not a disease, and abortion is not a treatment for disease. Okay, abortion is not chosen for healthcare reasons. In the vast majority of cases, it's chosen for social reasons, for reasons having to do with, I don't want to have this baby, I don't have the material resources to support the baby, I don't have the support, blah, 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 blah. So, first of all, I dispute his characterization of abortion as healthcare. But secondly, you'd think that the pro-choice universe would be a little more careful about how they talked about the need for minorities to get abortions. Given the long, rich, storied history of the founder of Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger, and how she very much enjoyed hobnobbing with the eugenicists of the 1930s, guys who lost a lot of credibility after this guy named Adolf Hitler was really enthusiastically in agreement with them in the 1940s. Given Margaret Sanger's penchant for hanging out with the Ku Klux Klan, given all the stuff Margaret Sanger said about wanting to decrease the numbers of African Americans, Irish, etc., basically all the races she thought just weren't as cool as, super cool white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. So I find it more than a little racist and a little offensive. I hate using the word offensive. It just seems so subjective. I find it more than a little evil and more than a little racist that the president thinks that the kind of health care that communities of color need is abortion. Beyond that, I've now started to see some people taking to Twitter talking about the fact that, the Texas abortion statute is banning abortions after the 6-week point in pregnancy. Most of the time, you can't really decisively test for Down syndrome until the 10-week point of pregnancy. And my buddy Jonathan Keller's not here right now, but he and I have been chatting throughout the last 24 hours and just texting each other nonstop and sending each other tweets and just going nuts. Jonathan pointed out this one Twitter account, this legal nerd guy, who was talking about this very issue, that it's pretty much impossible to test for Down syndrome before about 10 weeks of pregnancy. And this guy was bewailing the fact that red states will see this enormous increase in the number of people with Down syndrome. And that, the United States already has all these kind of negative connotations and negative perceptions around the world, and that this is just going to contribute to that. And basically making this unbelievably eugenic argument that it would be better if everyone with Down syndrome were just aborted. It would just be better for society if people with Down syndrome just did not exist. I mean, it's astounding how close, how little distance you have to travel as a pro-choice advocate to go from, oh, I'm upholding women's autonomy and dignity, to, we got to get rid of these undesirables. I mean, it's disgusting. But that's the natural consequence. That's the natural consequence of people just continually upholding the right to abortion for any reason. I mean, the any reason is often, I don't want to take care of someone with Down syndrome. I don't want to take care of someone, and to sort of affirm that aborting all of your people with Down syndrome is actually a good thing for society. I mean, I still remember this. This was a few years ago. CBS News had this amazing story about how, I forget which country it was. I think it might have been Iceland or Finland or Sweden or one of these Nordic countries, that there were no people in that country with Down syndrome. I think it might have been Iceland. That there were no people with Down syndrome in Iceland. And I thought, that's an interesting story. What's it going to say? Is there something about their diet that prevents the incidence of Down syndrome? Is there some medication or treatment, or is there something that prevents the incidence of, or limits the incidence of Down syndrome? Is there something they've done? No, what the story actually said was that they had a 100% success rate in aborting every single child with Down syndrome. That's all it was. Yeah, voting booths in the South, in the immediate post-Reconstruction South, had an amazing 100% white turnout and 0% African-American turnout. Yeah, because they killed every black person who tried to vote. Like this is not some accomplishment that I've eliminated Down syndrome. No, this is the brutal eugenic face of the abortion movement. And I guess I'm glad, in a sense, that by having Texas pass this law, it's going to give the country the ability to see, what does a state without legalized abortion, what does it look like? Because that's one of the encouraging things, is that doctors in Texas are spooked. They don't want to get sued for performing abortions, and you have Planned Parenthood clinics refusing to schedule abortions. So it may be a case that Texas, I mean, at least until the Dobbs case, at least until this gets decided in some other forum, maybe some individual tries to sue an abortion doctor and then it gets enjoined in that legal process later. But for now, for the immediate future, abortion after 6 weeks in the state of Texas is illegal. God bless Texas, and let's hope that all the rest of the country follows suit. All right, let's talk about how this Supreme Court case could impact the Dobbs case, the granddaddy of them all, where we're going to decide once and for all what to do with Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey. Next on Right to Life Radio. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you to Linda Teliha for being on the show earlier to do stories from the sidewalk. You can catch Right to Life Radio. If you liked what you've heard so far, you can catch the show later on as a podcast. Go to Apple Podcast or the Stitcher podcast app and give it a listen, or watch the show on YouTube, youtube.com/righttolifeca. All right. To close out the show, after this big historic Supreme Court case on abortion this week, what does it say about the future of Roe v. Wade? Does this case overturn Roe v. Wade? No, it does not. It does not quite overturn Roe v. Wade. This decision earlier this week was kind of a procedural case that basically said, no, we, the Supreme Court, are not going to prevent this Texas law from going into effect because the pro-choicers screwed it up. They didn't file... Basically, they didn't bring before the Supreme Court someone whom they could prevent from enforcing the law. Okay, the Texas law basically allows individuals to sue doctors. It doesn't allow the state to prosecute doctors. So basically, the Supreme Court can't place an injunction around the state of Texas. Texas is not going to enforce the law. Basically, the pro-choicers sued a whole bunch of people who were not going to enforce the law, and the Supreme Court's like, well, we can't enjoin people who aren't here. So for the moment, this Texas abortion law banning all abortion after 6 weeks of pregnancy will stay in place, but it's not because the justices said there is no legal right to there is no constitutional right to abortion found in the Constitution. But the court will have to decide that ultimate question. Over the course of this year, the court will hear the Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization case. This is a case out of Mississippi. challenging Mississippi's 15-week abortion ban, whether it is constitutional or not, whether it is permissible under the Constitution to ban abortion prior to fetal viability or not. So do we have an indication here of where the justices will rule? I think we have some indication. The minority in the court, the three liberal justices, the three Democrat appointee justices, I should say, Breyer, Ginsburg, and Breyer, Sotomayor, and Kagan. Not Ginsburg. Sorry for all you RBG fans. Not on the court anymore. Breyer, Kagan, and Sotomayor, they addressed in their dissent the core constitutional question. They said this Texas law, we should stop this Texas law because it is infringing upon a woman's constitutional right to abortion. John Roberts had a separate and different kind of dissent. John Roberts was only focused on the procedural side of things. He wasn't talking at all about the substantive question of whether or not women have a constitutional right to abortion. He completely sidestepped that question. A classic John Roberts move, deny the conservatives the victory on grounds that don't look like they're substantive, but really it's because you're doing what you want to do. Kind of a classic John Roberts move. However, John Roberts did not, at the end of the day, did not agree with the liberals in their argument that the law should be struck down because it was a violation of the constitutional rights of women to abortion. He did not agree with that, nor was such an argument persuasive to any of the five justices in the majority. So I think that indicates something. I mean, maybe it's just, look, this was a procedural question. They answered it procedurally. It doesn't say anything about what they think about Roe v. Wade. I don't know. I have a sense that if they were really exercised over the violation of a constitutional right, maybe they would have answered this question differently. I'm not sure. Now, here is one other good thing. As anyone who listens to this show knows, I am very nervous about John Roberts. I am very nervous about how he will rule in the Dobbs case. I think he is the most likely justice on the court among the Republican appointees to rule to uphold Roe v. Wade or Planned Parenthood versus Casey in some way. I think he will find some excuse, some non-substantive reason, whether it's a procedural thing, whether it's some sort of standing thing, whether it's whatever it is. He will find some hook to prevent himself from ruling to overturn Roe v. Wade. Maybe it'll just be a straight-up stare decisis thing. I don't know. But the good thing in this case is that it shows us that those five other Republican appointees, Barrett, Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, Thomas, Alito, that they are totally fine with ruling against the chief. And they've made that clear in a couple of cases lately, a couple of COVID cases. They are fine with ruling against Chief Justice Roberts when they disagree with him. And that gives a lot of power to Justice Thomas. Justice Thomas is the senior justice on the court after Roberts, and if he's the senior justice in the majority, he decides who writes the opinion or he writes it himself. So it gives me hope that the Dobbs case will be decided correctly. But again, Supreme Court forecasting is very difficult. I'm not going to pretend I'm some great expert and I know absolutely everything, but I know enough at least to talk about it intelligently, I hope. Well, folks, that'll do it for the John Girardi Show. Francis Albert Sinatra will sing us out. Thank you for listening. This has been Right to Life Radio from Right to Life of Central California.